It knows when you're awake. It watches from the corner you can't quite see. And when your body betrays you, it finally comes closer. I wasn't alone in my paralysis. For 23 seconds, I was frozen. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't even blink. And in the perfect silence of my locked bedroom, I heard the slow, wet sound of something crawling up the side of my bed. Nightbound Bloodline presents 5 Reddit's Sleep Paralysis Horror Stories. Sleep Paralysis, compiled from the digital archives of our /paranormal and our /sleep paralysis. Stories where the mind's prison becomes a stage for the uninvited. Medical texts will tell you it's a harmless glitch of the brain, a temporary disconnect between mind and body as you cross the threshold of sleep. A common, explainable phenomenon. But the accounts, the first-hand testimonies, they speak of something else. They describe a shared horror, a chilling consistency in the details that science cannot dismiss. These are not just nightmares. These are visitations. Tonight, we give voice to 5 who have stared into the dark during their most vulnerable moments and found something staring back. Our first story comes from a user known only as Staticase, a skeptical mind forced to reconsider everything. Story 1. The Thing in the Corner. Learn my name. My name's Chris. I'm 28. I'm a network security analyst. My whole job is finding logical flaws, spotting intrusions, building walls to keep things out. I don't believe in ghosts, demons, or shadow people. I believe in code, caffeine, and concrete evidence. Sleep paralysis was just a biological bug to me, a system error. A scary one, sure, but just a trick of the mind. Until it wasn't. It started 3 months ago. Always the same. I'd wake up, or I'd think I'd wake up. I'd be in my bed, in my room. Everything was exactly where it should be, but it was all heavier. The air felt thick, like syrup. I couldn't move a muscle. Not a finger, not a toe. The only thing I had control over was my breathing, and even that was shallow, panicked. And in the corner, by the closet, there was a shadow. It was darker than the rest of the room. A blot of pure absence. At first, it was just a shape. A tall, mannish shape, but stretched and wrong. It had no features, no face. But I could feel it watching me. The dread was a physical weight on my chest. The third time it happened, I heard it. A sound like dry leaves rustling or whispering, just on the edge of hearing. I'd strain, trapped in my own skull, trying to make out words. Nothing. Just that awful, intimate rustling. I started sleeping with the hall light on. It didn't matter. The shadow was always there, in its corner, drinking the light. Then, a week ago, I snapped into the paralysis again. The pressure, the thick air, the shadow. But this time, the rustling was clearer. It wasn't random. It was a voice. A voice made of crackling static and broken glass. It was trying to form a word. My heart was a jackhammer against my ribs. And then it spoke. Churus. It said my name. It learned my name. The shadow shifted then. It didn't move toward me. It unfolded. It got taller, thinner, spreading up the wall and across the ceiling like spilled ink, until its formless head was directly above my bed. The rustling became a chorus of whispers, all saying my name, over and over. The paralysis broke when I felt something cold and dry, like dead leaves, brush against my forehead. I screamed, finally, and bolted upright. The room was empty. The corner was just a corner. But the air was still cold. I haven't slept in my bed since. I camp on the couch, and I keep every light in the apartment blazing. I'm a security analyst. I know an intrusion when I see one. Something got in, and I don't know how to firewall it out. A system error or a signal received. Our second story suggests these visitations may not be random. It comes from a user named Lunar Echo, who discovered their paralysis was not a solitary confinement, but a window. Story 2. The Shared Frequency. I'm Maya. I'm a licensed massage therapist. My life is about easing tension, reading the body's silent language, restoring calm. I've always been sensitive. Not psychic, not by a long shot, but attuned. I feel shifts in energy. For years, my sleep paralysis was a private torture. A recurring scene of a dark figure sitting on my chest, its weight crushing my lungs. I told myself it was stress, grief, my mind punishing me. Then I met Leo. Leo was a new client. We had an instant, easy rapport. During a session, he mentioned offhandedly, almost embarrassed, his struggles with night terrors, specifically sleep paralysis. My blood ran cold. I asked him, carefully, to describe it. He described the weight, the figure, the feeling of ancient, malicious intent. He described the exact pattern of the streetlight shadows on his wall during his episodes. And he described the smell, a scent of damp earth and ozone, like the air after a lightning strike hits too close. A smell I had never told another living soul about, because it was too specific, too bizarre. We realized we weren't just having similar experiences. We were having the same one. At the same time, we decided to test it. One night, we set a time, 3:17 a.m., a time that featured in both our episodes. We slept in our own homes, miles apart, with our phones on voice record next to our beds. I was plunged into the paralysis instantly. The weight, the dread, the figure formed out of the dark at the foot of my bed. But this time, I could hear it. Not just the usual silent scream in my head. A sound, that deep, resonant hum, vibrating in my bones. The figure tilted its head, and from the static of the hum, a voice, guttural and layered, spoke a single phrase. "You are not alone." The paralysis broke. I was sobbing, shaking. I grabbed my phone and called Leo. He answered before the first ring finished, his voice raw with terror. He didn't say hello. He just whispered, "You heard it too, didn't you?" The hum, the voice. We played our recordings. On both, the steady rhythm of our trapped breathing. And at the exact same timestamp, a distortion, a deep, electronic groan. And beneath it, just audible, those same words, "You are not alone." We've experimented since. It only happens when we both sleep at the same time. It's as if our vulnerability, our shared frequency, acts as a beacon or a door. We don't know what it is. A parasite that feeds on linked consciousness. A signal from something that exists outside our normal perception. All I know is my paralysis was never just in my head. It was a broadcast, and something out there is tuning in. Two stories, a shared horror. But what of those who are not visited by shadows or voices, but by something with a far more tangible appetite? Our third story comes from Forgotten Carrion, who learned that some things don't just watch. Story 3. This was posted by a user named Forgotten Carrion. The title was simple. It feeds on fear, but it prefers flesh. I'm David, 34. I work nights as a custodian at a long-term care facility. I'm used to silence, to empty halls, to the small, lonely hours. I've had sleep paralysis since I was a kid. The shadow at the end of the hall, the old hag sitting on my chest. I was almost numb to it. A familiar horror. Then, 6 months ago, it changed. The first new episode was different. No shadow, no weight, just the paralysis and a sound. From the hallway outside my bedroom door. A wet, rhythmic sound. Slop, 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 like a dog drinking noisily from a bowl. But slower, more deliberate. I could move my eyes. I stared at the thin line of yellow light under my door, and I saw a shadow block it. Something was out there, crouched right against the wood. The sound stopped. There was a long silence. Then, a new sound. The slow, grating scrape of long, hard somethings dragging down the length of my door. From top to bottom, it was testing the surface, looking for a way in. The paralysis broke when the doorknob began to jiggle. Not violently, gently, like someone was patiently testing it. I screamed, lunged for the light. Nothing there. But the next morning, I found 4 deep, parallel gouges in the wood of my door. Deep, as if something with incredible strength had carved into the solid oak. And at the base of the door, on the carpet, a dark, sticky stain that smelled of copper and something sickly sweet. It became a ritual. Every few nights. The paralysis, the drinking sound at the door, the scratching, the testing of the knob. And every morning, new gouges, deeper. The stain always reappeared, no matter how much I cleaned. The smell started to linger in the hall. Then, 2 weeks ago, the paralysis hit me like a truck. But this time, the sounds weren't at the door. They were in the room. The wet, lapping sound was right beside my bed. I strained my eyes to the left. I could see its silhouette against the window's moonlight. It was crouched on my floor. Not a shadow, something solid. Its back was hunched, covered in what looked like matted, stringy hair. Its head was too large, its shoulders bunched with muscle. And it was leaning over something on my floor. It wasn't drinking from a bowl. It was feeding on something. Something that looked like a pale, shapeless mound. I heard a sickening tear, another wet, slopping sound. It raised its head. I saw the long, thin profile of a snout, glistening. It turned its head toward me. Its eyes didn't glow. They were black pits, but they gleamed with a terrible intelligence. And it smiled, a grin full of needle points, dripping with that dark, sticky fluid. It went back to its feeding. I was trapped, forced to listen, to smell the metallic tang of blood and that cloying sweetness. When I could move, I didn't scream. I vomited. On the floor, where it had been crouching, was the stain. And in the middle of it, a small, sharp, grayish-white fragment. A piece of tooth. Not human. Not animal. I keep it in a jar. A proof I never wanted. It's not just fear it wants. It's marking its territory. And I think it's almost done with the door. A creature of physical, ravenous hunger. But what of the paralysis that offers not a monster, but a perfect, terrible mimicry? Our fourth story, from echo_of_home, warns that sometimes the most terrifying visitor already has a key. Story 4. The Welcome Home. My name is Anya. I'm a graphic designer. I live alone with my cat, Salem, in the apartment I grew up in. After my mom passed, the silence here became a physical thing. Heavy. I started experiencing sleep paralysis about a year after she died. At first, it was the usual, the crushing weight, the shadow in the rocking chair she loved. I blamed grief, loneliness. Then, the sounds started. Not scary sounds. That was the worst part. It was the sound of the apartment as it used to be. I'd be frozen in my bed, and I'd hear the familiar, comforting creak of floorboards in the hall, the soft clatter of dishes from the kitchen, the faint, staticky hum of the old radio my mom used to listen to. It was a recording of a happier time, played back in my haunted mind. Or so I thought. One night, the paralysis held me, and I heard her, my mother's voice, clear as day, singing her favorite lullaby from down the hall. The one she sang to me when I was sick. A wave of warmth, of profound relief, washed over me. Then ice. Because my mother has been dead for 3 years. The singing stopped, and the footsteps started. Her slow, measured footsteps, with the slight shuffle of her bad knee, coming down the hallway toward my room. My door was open a crack. I could see the slice of the dark hallway. A shadow fell across the light from the living room window. It stopped outside my door. The doorknob didn't turn. The door just swung inward, silently, and she stood there. It was her. The shape of her hair, her housecoat, everything. But it was dark, a solid silhouette against the hall light. It didn't move. It just stood there, in my doorway, watching me. And then it spoke. In my mother's voice, but flat. Empty. Like a recording missing its soul. Anya, I'm home. Salem, who was sleeping on my feet, erupted in a hissing, spitting frenzy I have never heard from him before. He launched himself off the bed and vanished. The thing in the doorway didn't flinch. It took a step into the room, then another. It was coming to my bedside. I was screaming in my mind, begging my body to move. As it leaned over me, I could smell it. Not my mom's perfume. It smelled of damp plaster and cold soil. The smell of the empty space inside a wall. Its hand, a dark outline, reached for my forehead. Just as its fingers, cold as grave dirt, brushed my skin, the spell broke. I gasped, jerking upright. The room was empty. The door was closed. Salem was hiding under the bed for 2 days. I was left with the echo of that voice and that smell. It doesn't want to scare me with monsters. It wants to comfort me with a lie, to wear my mother's skin and get close enough to touch, to replace. And the worst part? Sometimes, in the paralysis, I want it to be real. I want her back, and I think it knows that. A mimic, a predator using our deepest loves as a lure. For our final story, we turn from the intimate horror of the home to something far more vast and ancient. This account comes from Skyward_Stare, who didn't find a creature in their room, but found their room had become a gateway to something else. Story 5. The ceiling was gone. I'm Leo, 41, an airline cargo loader. My world is metal containers, flight schedules, and the hum of jet engines. I'm grounded in the physical, the weighable, the shippable. I'd never had sleep paralysis, never believed in it. Then, I spent a night in a cheap motel off Interstate 80, room 217. Exhausted from a double shift, I crashed. I don't know what woke me up. The silence. It was absolute. No highway drone. No hum from the ancient AC unit. Just a vacuum of sound. And I couldn't move. Panic, pure and simple, set in. I tried to look around. That's when I realized. I couldn't see the ceiling. It wasn't dark. The ceiling was just gone, replaced by a vast, starless expanse. Not black, but a deep, cosmic violet, shot through with slow, swirling currents of nebulous gas that glowed with a faint, sickly bioluminescence. This wasn't the night sky. This was something under the sky. An ocean of empty, ancient space that had been waiting right above the cheap plasterboard all along. The paralysis wasn't just in my body. I felt it in my soul. A gravity of utter insignificance. And then, I saw them. Shapes. Vast, impossible geometries that defied focus. They moved. No, drifted through that violet expanse. They were too big to comprehend, all sharp, non-Euclidean angles and shifting, translucent membranes. They weren't looking at me. I was less than a microbe to them. I was just in the way. On the lens of a microscope, they were casually glancing through. Then, one of them paused. A segment of its form, a cluster of eyes that weren't eyes, oriented downward, toward me. There was no malice, no curiosity even. It was the same regard you might give a speck of dust on a control panel. A passive, automated acknowledgement of a slight irregularity. A beam of cold, soundless light. Not light, but a concept of inspection, fell upon me. It wasn't illumination. It was dissolution. I felt my thoughts unravel, my memories become public data, my very sense of self begin to smear across that infinite canvas. I prayed for the shadow in the corner. I begged for the old hag on my chest. Anything but this utter, cosmic indifference. The inspection lasted for what felt like eons. Then, the beam withdrew. The entity drifted on. I was irrelevant. A corrected glitch. The ceiling solidified. The sound of the highway rushed back in, deafeningly loud. I could move. I didn't scream. I didn't move for an hour. I just lay there, weeping silently. I had seen the architecture behind reality, and I had been deemed meaningless. I quit my job. I can't sleep in rooms with ceilings anymore. I sleep in a tent, in open fields, under the real sky. Because I know now, the only thing more terrifying than a monster in your room is realizing your room was never really there at all. It's just a painted bubble floating in a void we were never meant to perceive. 5 doors, each unlocked by the vulnerable mind. A sentient shadow that learns. A shared frequency that broadcasts. A ravenous feeder that scars the physical world. A mimic that wears our love like a skin. And a window that opens not onto a monster, but onto the terrifying, indifferent cosmos that houses us all. The common thread is not the monster, but the state itself. The paralysis. Is it a neurological glitch that simply allows us to perceive what is always there, lurking just outside the perception of our busy, waking minds? Or is the state itself a signal, a ringing dinner bell and a frequency only the hungry and the ancient can hear? Science offers us comforting explanations. These stories offer us something else, a chilling consensus from the front lines of the paralyzed night. They tell us that when the body sleeps and the mind wakes, the walls get thin, and things pass through. We want to hear from you. Have you stood on that threshold? Have you seen, heard, or felt something in the silent prison of your own body? Share your account in the comments below. Your story may be the key to a pattern we are only beginning to see. If you found yourself holding your breath tonight, if these echoes of the paralyzed hour resonated with you, help us keep the lantern lit. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss our next descent into the unexplained. This has been Nightbound Bloodline. Thank you for listening. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.